What is going on, people? It is Community Beacon. It's July 24th, 2026. We halfway through the summer. We're halfway through the summer. I almost made it. My AC went out. My AC went out maybe around a day or two ago, and I was like, I almost made it. Almost made it through the summertime. So I have no decision to be made. I do want my kids to be comfortable. I'm from a Caribbean household, so I certainly remember being sent to Jamaica, what we call country, St. Elizabeth, Pepper District to be exact, where if you wanted to be cool, you got to sit out on that front patio and be still. We were in the valley. I mean, it was the hottest of the hot. And then at nighttime, either you had two things. Either you wanted to be cool and let that wind come in, so you had to open up the window. But along that came in that window was mosquitoes. So it was like, do you want mosquitoes or do you want to be cool? Like you had to make the decision.
You didn't
No
have a net?
electricity. No electricity, rarely running water. I had to walk down to the pipe to go get our water for your bath, your to brush your teeth. Learn that, if you wanted to have a warm bath, you had to put that water out. The buckets you collected, you had to put that out in the sun so it would warm up. Yeah, man. So it doesn't really bother me. I'm not a huge AC guy, anyways. But it's always good to have to kind of get the house, especially in this Florida heat. So we get a chance to figure out what that looks like. Elijah's a trooper anyways, he's here with me now, so he's like, "Oh, I'm fine, dad." I'm like, "Alright, well, good, I don't have to rush this call that I'm go." Yeah, but we're halfway through summer. In about 2 to 3 weeks, the kids will be starting back in school. August 10th, we get a chance to figure out what school Paul will be headed to, so that's gonna be interesting. I visited a couple schools. Let me tell and I first off, let me introduce the brother on the other side of the mic. We got my brother Joel Simmons. The Opportunity Lab, I had a chance to go visit the brother yesterday. We spoke for around at least 2 hours. I don't know how long we were at the Opportunity Lab for, but there's like almost nothing that compares to having a conversation and it just leads to anywhere and we can just fully be in ourselves and workshop some things. So, brother, what is going on, man?
Hey, man, I'm glad to be here as always. Am I coming in loud and clear?
Yeah, yeah, you're fine.
All right.
Yeah, you're
I tell you what, man, that's everything that you said, I just found interesting. Like, you didn't have no nets? You didn't have like a mosquito net? Man,
We had these
yeah.
little coils. I don't Did you all ever have, like, these coils that you could light up? They're these green coils that you could I don't I haven't seen them in years, but that's what was supposed to be our our mosquito repellent.
But don't worry. I saw I saw a video a few days ago that they were creating a robot, and they were
Drone.
a robot drone that was a mosquito killer. And so it's like this big, and they they put AI into it so it can fly around the room and eat mosquitoes.
I think I saw that video. I didn't
My
here's
god.
something interesting for people to do some research on. Like, Google has a lab where they keep, like, tens of thousands of mosquitoes, and they breed them in the lab. And they're doing all kinds of work surrounding it. I'm like, normally people will look at it and say, well, Google is it's a computer company, it's online, but they have these labs that they're working with mosquitoes and attempting to figure out how to eradicate them or whatever. So it's like, I don't know all about that. I know I was in the midst of it in Jamaica with those mosquitoes and I survived, right? Like here I am.
Here you are.
Here I am talking to Joel on Community Beacon over Wi-Fi, and he's in the Opportunity Lab, and I'm home, and I survived the mosquitoes. I don't know if I want Google eradicating things on the planet, but all the things we do in the for convenience. So interesting. So interesting.
I enjoyed you yesterday, brother. There was nothing like having you man, at one point in time, it was just like it was almost like a pinch yourself moment, you know? It's like we're here together with each other every week, and but we're kinda, like, barred, if you will, by that rectangle screen and that camera, that little pinhole right there that, records us, and man, just seeing you like leaning up against, you know, the front desk. It's like, and you were talking, I went somewhere for a moment. I'm like, he's like, man, he's here. He's like in the building. He's standing right there. And I had like this, it was just this moment. And I was like, man, I'm just very, very grateful for you being in the opportunity lab. Yes, absolutely. But for us to just like be having this dialogue and to be like live and, you know, I could, I could touch you if I wanted to, and it's like, God, man, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, man. Like there's so many things that are done virtually, but it pales in comparison to reality, to actuality, to being there, to breathing the same air, you know? It was like one time you walk by and like I could smell your cologne. And I was like, yo, he's here. You took the bottle of water. You're like, I'm going to drink it right now, you know? Like I said a comment to you. I was like, this is all this is real. This is real. This is like, not that it's made up because it's online, but it's just like, nah, this is real. This is real. Like those facial expressions, I'm witnessing them live. Like when you look off and you're gathering this thought, or when you close your eyes, that's real. It's like that's not on the other side of the screen. That's 15 feet from my feet. That's happening right there, right now. And it's like, and I just had this moment in the middle of our conversation. And I was overwhelmed. It's just like, oh my God. It felt so good. It was just like, hmm. And I'm gonna tell you something, that moment right there really, like, for me, it set the cadence for the rest of our conversation. Because in the beginning, it was like there was like, I'm not there yet. I got to get there. I got to meet the brother. When I got here, you're just sitting on the stoop. There's no issues. As soon as I pop out of the elevator, you're like, "What's up?" And we walk in, and there's like you ask all these questions, and we're walking through.
I asked a lot of questions. There was a lot of questions. Yeah, yeah. I was
Yeah,
like,
man.
brother, forgive me for all these questions, but I got a lot of questions.
Yeah, I was grilled. I was grilled. I felt grilled for a little while, and I'm like, "Nah, it's no big deal." But I did feel grilled. I'm like,
Yeah,
"Gosh, man!" And I sat down. I went from one seat to the next, and then all of a sudden, it was that one moment. It was just like, "Yo, that's my brother."
yeah, yeah. Man, and I think that leads directly into the conversation. I think it would be dope to have because I do enjoy Zoom for the sake of business, for the sake of being able to access people that you wouldn't normally have access to, like you would have to go, pick up and probably travel to meet certain people. So Zoom has introduced me to some people that probably, in my mind, I wouldn't say they would have been out of my reach, but it would have been like a logistical thing. I would have had to figure out what am I doing with Chalky? What's going on with Paul? What's going on with Elijah? Is on a certain week. Who can I get to fill in? So on and so forth. But there is something about being in the presence of people and a consciousness of people that you can have certain conversations, especially if you're not afraid to go there and have them and hold space. Is if you're not holding space and you're just going along, I think there's something different. But if I can go and I can actually hold space in a place, and it's not really hard for me to hold space because I'm gonna, figure it out. Like even that conversation, I remember the question. The brother was like, "Better question." And I was like, "Nah, it's not a better question. This is the question." And some people may not necessarily want to do that, right? I know the brother knows me. None of this stuff is done out of, to be mean or nasty or whatever, right? It's just like I'm just trying to get a clear understanding. But yeah, when you get around, it's like, man, it does end up being a different feel. Now I strive to be there's a battle rapper named Swamp, and he says, "I'm the same person you see on the streets that I am on the internet." I strive to be the same person that you see out and about is the same person that you'll meet, on online in Zoom, but there is that different feeling. And so right before we got onto this call, we were talking about there was a conversation, and for me it was like a sales conversation. So forgive us, and even forgive me for the language and how I communicated, because it can sound transactional. But this is not meant to be transactional. It's actually like great sales is actually great relationships. Right? So you're we're attempting to have, like, great relationships with this person. I know that's what I wanna do, especially in the line of work that I do. It's more so about the relationship than this transaction. The transactions do come and go, and there's people that I probably don't even remember, unfortunately, because it was transactional. It was transactional for them, it was transactional for me. But over time, what you learn, people who have longevity in the industry, people who enjoy their job and aren't getting burned out. This is in my experience. People who are in it for the relation. They end up accumulating relationships, right? I don't want to be if it's transactional, you'll never stop working if it's transactional. And I know plenty of successful real estate agents, car salespeople, insurance people who are in the business not because they love it, but because they have to be in it. And they're 60, 70, 80 years old. I learned, thankfully, whether it was intentional or not, I learned that, oh, it's more to it than a transaction, right? If I don't have transactions for months or years at a time, because of my relationships, I was able to secure, uh, like assets, rental properties, or whatever it is, so on and so forth. So, say the market is not exactly in my favor, although transactions are happening all the time. It's a slow month, right? It's a slow month. I oftentimes am okay because of the relationships that I've accumulated, or the relationships that I have. And that's me being in the industry for 10 years. I've now had my license for 10 years. I've probably been doing real estate longer as an investor than I was having my license. But you have people who are 60, 70 years old, and they've been doing transactions, they've done well, they've made it through the drought times, and then they've had some of the great times, but they look around and they're like, "I can't retire." Like, I didn't accumulate I was doing all the things that people told me to do. I was grinding, I was making the phone calls, they were door knocking, all these different things in order to get a transaction, but they never accumulated what we call in the industry a book of business. Because even if you don't buy property, which is I almost think it's like impossible not to buy property while engaging in real estate. Because there's plenty of times that a client will go see a property and they'll say, "This one's not for me," and you're like, "This is like a diamond in the rough," they're looking for a place to live. That's different from a person looking for an investment property and is able to identify those things. So I'm looking at it from, oh, these numbers work. Right, like, there's no issue, "Oh, it's gonna cost me this to fix this. These numbers work for me, I can get this property, or I know somebody who wants this property." Versus if you're in the business of doing these things, it might not work for the person who's looking for their home, but it works for me in an investment. If you develop these relations, that's why I picked real estate, because it was so rich. There were so many ways of how real estate and business go hand in hand. You meet so many different people, you meet, type A's, type B, like all these different kinds of personalities, and you get a chance to kind of start to see the pattern in it. And one of the things that you spoke about, brothers, like, oh man, this brother's in person. One of the things that we're taught, especially in sales, is that you want to get breast to breast, right? Like the easiest thing is the phone call. Yeah, but you're not gonna, especially in real estate, you're not gonna close deals on high ticket items oftentimes on a phone call. Then we've essentially moved into Zoom. Now Zoom is so recent, right? Being able to it's really changed the landscape, because now Zoom and being online and getting face to face. So there's a lot of transactions or things that can happen over Zoom, because we get a chance to see facial expressions, right? I can take up this camera and say, if I'm looking at a house, you can show me your house with your camera. If they're on a phone, take me around the house to see a property. It's different, but the ultimate is being able to meet somebody. When you can meet someone and actually, you know, if you wanted to reach out and touch them, shake hands, look eye to eye. There's a different kind of eye contact in meeting breast to breast. but you kinda get a clear understanding of, like, what it is and how far you can go. You can almost see certain people grimace as you go down the line of if you're asking them questions, or you can see, like, "Okay, this is they don't necessarily trust me just yet." Right? So it's so interesting in that way. I don't wanna hog the conversation.
No, never, never. I mean, that's just what we do, man. We just speak what's on our heart, so or on our mind. So I'm liking the conversation. There's definitely an opening for this. I thought about lots of different things. Like I was dealing with one high ticket client. I close high tickets on Zoom, right? I do close high tickets on Zoom. So at least high tickets for my industry, I should say. Your industry is would make my high tickets look like low tickets, right? But there was one I had that came up, and man, I traveled down to Pembroke, man. I walked inside of the building, walked around. I did old-fashioned stuff where I printed up everything, the old format, you know, the PowerPoint, but, all the information of what I saw and what we could offer and, what some of those needs were, to paint pictures. And it was very different. It was a very different type of feel. And I was very grateful for that. I didn't actually close that deal. It'd be beautiful if I was able to come here and say, "Hey, listen, I closed that deal," but I didn't. I didn't close that deal. That deal, it cost me a few $100s, and it's not that it's not closable. We're still having this conversation. The thing is that, like, repositioning the work and the relationship and developing the relationship and then the needs and then addressing these things, and so there's so many other intricacies that I got a chance to recognize, and to be fair, it was me closing a deal, those uncharted territory, right? Like, I did all my research, and I had everything there to present, and I think you said it, and if you didn't say it, we may have talked about it before, like, making it non-transactional, and so I think that that's really interesting, and, I don't say I'm perfect at this thing at all, but making it non-transactional. So there's, like, this relationship building, but there's also, okay, this is the need. The need is sometimes the thing that the person says, and sometimes it's not what the person says. And I think that can be very interesting. And then sometimes it's that the want is greater than the need. And so, man, it's just like there's a couple of things right there that is just I see you smiling. I feel like you're ready to say something about this because I want to hear what you have to say.
I love it because, so if you, like, pay attention to, like, some of the people who do direct copy, so they're, like, there's huge marketing, advertising guys, so you got, like, Gary Halpert is, like, huge, and, Dean Jackson always talks about Gary Halpert. There's these mega guys in this, and they do what we call direct copy. And so when you mention, like, the needs, because this will confuse a lot of different people, right? Like, especially if you're not in this communication, you're in sales. I'll give a quick example of, say, their lease is coming due, right? Like, their lease is up. They wanna buy a house, so the need is the house, like, the need is the shelter, like, the need is this, and then you get into it, and it's not if you and you can and some people want to sell on that need, right? Like, they wanna sell to the point to where this is what the person needs. Like, if your understanding of whatever your product is, you're like, "Okay, I have this product. This person has a need for that." But people don't buy on needs. This is something that Gary Halbert speaks on. They buy on features and there's benefits, right? The benefit is the need, what we would say is a need, and the feature is what catches their eye, right? Like for in home sales, it'll be, anything that's written in the description, big white kitchen,
Like the
nice.
wants.
Yeah, it's the want. So those are the features. I heard a car salesman say, "We sell them the sizzle and give them the steak." right? You know, like we don't you don't sell them on the steak, you sell them on the sizzle. This is the feature of the car. The car has this, that, and the third. Da, da, da. The need when they walked in is like, my car is broke down. You know what I mean? Like I need a new car, but they're not buying on that. They're gonna buy on the, oh, you know what this car does? Did you see how this? I remember my Escalade, the thing comes down when you open up the door. The step comes down when you open up the door. So people will say, "Oh my god!" Like, yeah, like that's what kind of sells people on the car. Like you don't need that. You just you know, like a regular truck. You either have the side rails or you hop up into the car, right? But you when you see the Escalade, that's what the Escalade is being sold. The Escalade is the same thing as I think it's like the Yukon, like a Chevy Tahoe or something. Right, yeah, you got the Tahoe and you have the Escalade. They're the same car, probably the same engine, same actual body or something, but then the Escalade has all these features. When you see a bunch of people driving these Escalades, that's what makes it this luxury vehicle. So yeah, that's what I was smiling about, like where you're like, you don't really sell like people have a need, but it's the wants, it's everything that comes around it. You're in coaching. The need would be someone who's looking for possibly really your confidence, but like people want the frameworks, they want understanding, the clarity, and so on and so forth. That's like the need. Like you look at them, you're like, this framework is perfect for you. Like I know exactly how I can transfer that information to you so that you can use this, you know, for however long. But what people are looking for, people may come in there looking for coaching, they're looking for, we have a community, we have, you know, classes on this time, or you have this, like, you know, this coursework or whatever. Like, it's interesting. Like, these people have you specifically as a coach, but they're like, but I also want this coursework that I can do you know, 24/7 a day. I can wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm, you know, having anxiety or whatever, and I can go over this coursework. It'll give me something to do. That's a feature of the thing, right? The feature or the community. I need a community. How, you know, how many people are in this community? How many people are doing the coaching? That's also a feature of coaching. So you see, like these huge coaching, like say a Tony Robbins, like he's selling you the features of this thing, right? You have a community to come back to. You can engage in it in a certain kind of way. These aren't necessarily needs for them. These people, the need actually is, I want to see a change, a shift in my behavior possibly, or my identity. But the features is really what they're sold on. A lot of people would, especially I know I did. I came into into real estate when I actually wasn't, you know, doing it for myself. I actually came in with a more of an investor mindset. So for me, it was like all about the numbers. Like, you need. I heard Ryan Serhant, the super popular agent, right? He said, if it's under a million, it's an affordability thing. If it's over a million, it's like a preference thing, right? That's pretty much how he paraphrased it. And I'm like, yeah, if it's under $1 million for most people, like you're just trying to find the most affordable house. But when the house is over $1 million, now it's really about what I like, what I want, you know, because most things are available to you if the house is over $1 million. Now you're thinking super about like the neighborhood, not just the neighborhood, the type of people you want to be around, the everything that's in the house. It could be a brand new construction. I don't want this fridge in here. Right, I need go they will give the fridge away. I've seen people give free fridges away. If you can't understand this, people will give away their fridge. They'll give away these brand new washer and dryers, brand new fridges. They'll a brand new kitchen. I don't want this kitchen. Right? Like, I'm redoing the kitchen, you know, this kitchen is not enough stove. Meanwhile, you know, I came up in a place where you didn't throw anything away. You that stove until if one of the burners was working on the stove, you was gonna use the stove, right? But over a certain price point, it's like, I can have all these things. Under that price point, most people are looking for the nicest thing that they can I wouldn't even say afford, because some people can't afford it. What's the nicest thing that I can qualify for, right? Because now we're talking about debt to income ratio of, for those you don't know, there's a certain ratio you have to have, which they tell you that you can buy something. Now we're looking at 45. Some loan programs even go up to 51% of your debt to income ratio. So you are bringing in $4,000 just real cleanly. You don't have any debt. $4,000 a month, they're saying that you can afford a $2,000 a month payment, right? That's everything included: taxes, insurance, your payment, so on and so forth. So a lot of people are looking for the home that they qualify for. Like I said, it wouldn't even be afford, because any financial literate person will say you shouldn't buy your mortgage, and your mortgage, everything included, your housing costs shouldn't exceed, someone may say 30 or 35%. But for most people, their housing payment exceeds 40, it goes up to 45% or whatever it is that the loan product has. So if it's 45%, like I said, once I seen a loan product that went up to 51%. There were other things attached to it, right? Now you especially if you don't have the down payment, you're talking about your PMI or mortgage insurance. Your interest rate's probably going to be a little bit higher because of the rate that you have. I think it's super important to like pay attention, especially in sales, to the client's wants and what the features are on something. Because if you're gonna sell to what they need, how you communicate that, right? Like how I would communicate to the way that a person to their needs. You really give them their needs on the back end of the features or their wants. Otherwise, you more than likely you won't do a lot of selling in my in my experience. I've actually talked people out of selling, or excuse me, buying, because I'm like this may not necessarily fit your needs, and find somebody else to actually sell it to them. So what one of the things which I think is super important in this is not to allowing people their own choice. I think it's important to allow people to have their own choices, and not necessarily be judgmental about it, but having discernment, like, but being able to explain the that's probably one of the best ways to engage, or to create a relationship with someone, is to really just point out their choices and allow them to make their own decision, but be upfront and truthful about it, right? So I think that's kind of, for me, I thought I knew better than what somebody wanted. I thought I knew what was best for people. I would look at, if they're buying a house, and I would look at, I was like, well, I know you can qualify for this, but I don't necessarily think this is a great house for you because of everything that it comes with. Maybe it's the maintenance. It's an older home, so we're looking at some maintenance that needs to be done on it, but it might be in a good neighborhood. And I essentially would not allow people their own decision. What I found that in great relationships, you can give information. I heard someone say, "Don't give advice. You never give advice for free." But, at a time, advice is something that you expect a person to take. So I know back in the day, I was giving a lot of advice and kind of attempting to point people in a direction, as opposed to allowing them to have their own journey. And at the same time, inform them of what they could look to expect. And I found that people who understand that and still do things that I probably wouldn't do, right? That's what I wouldn't do. But when you allow people to have their journey, when you allow people to make their own choices or decisions, and they may come back to you, man, why didn't you warn me? "Yeah, I did, I did, I did explain it to you. The best thing to do is, especially when you're engaging in these different things, are like emails. I remember one time I had a client who had a property, and this is when it was more of a seller's market. So you find the property, there's a lot of people who are looking at it. This is, 21, 22. 2021, 2022, looking at properties. As soon as properties came on the market in certain neighborhoods, they were gone. So finally, we found a property. It was in a certain neighborhood. It was right around something that she could afford or qualify for, and or qualify for. And one of the things that she was mentioning, because she wanted to get the property, was like she didn't want to do an inspection, and I think she was paying cash. So she's like, in order for us to beat out all the other people, is like, I don't want to do an inspection. I just wanna buy this house cash. And if you've ever looked for a home, that I'm sure if you found something that you really liked, and you've looked at a lot of different homes and you knew this kinda was it, that's something that a person would say, "I'm not gonna do an inspection. Like, let's just try to get this let's try to get this thing wrapped up. It's cash, I can offer X amount of money, I'm not gonna do an inspection." Because from the seller side, And a buyer who's not going to do an inspection, like, you can't beat that, right? Oftentimes when you get an inspection, an inspector is going to find something, even if it's new construction. Any inspector worth his weight in gold is going to find something that's going on with the property. And what does that do? That allows for negotiations and or for you to have this house on the market longer. Because if I put this house under contract and I don't have an inspection, or I do have an inspection period, that's 7 days. And within that inspection period, I can say, oh, yep, if you don't negotiate with me, then I no longer want to be in this contract. That's essentially how, is usual and customary. So now if you're going in and because it's a seller's market and you say, I don't want to have an inspection, most sellers and sellers agents are going to look at you, listing agents are going to look at you and say, "Ooh, like that's a great deal." Some people are even willing to take to sell the home on a discount because of that. Because maybe they do know something that's could possibly happen with the house. So this buyer in particular was saying, like, what if we say that we don't want an inspection of the property? And what was so cool about it was that I had such great relationships with inspectors because relationships is not just a buyer and seller thing or prospective client. It's also people who are around the industry that you'll use at some point. One of the things that the relationship with inspectors was the ability to get an inspector out to the property within 3 days. Right? So now this is how you position an offer to where it's like you don't necessarily have to not do an inspection, but it just gives it, or you can, like you can do it. But in this case, just like I was mentioning in the beginning, I need to put this thing in writing because it's a huge red flag if you're not doing an inspection, especially if it's outside of if this is the home that you're gonna live in. Even in the seller's market, you always want to have some kind of independent eyes on the home no matter how good you think you walked through the home and looked at it, like I said, their inspectors are meant to find something. But because I gave the option, we can do that. And I have the relationship to where we can get an inspector out here in the next 2 to 3 days. So anyone who's not willing to accept a 72-hour inspection period, which is not a long time, 7 days, anything over 7 days, I think in my mind is long. But if somebody's willing and you have the option to use that when you're putting forth this offer, if it's in a buyer's market, heck, you can have a 14-day. That house is just sitting on the market, you can have 14-day inspection period. But when it's a seller's market, if you have the ability to get somebody out there within 48 to 72 hours, definitely within 7 days is kind of how you want to position it. So I knew that most people are going to say, I can get somebody out there. We need an inspection period of 7 days. Well, I'm going to say, well, listen, we can have an inspection period of 72 hours. Not only that, this buyer is also paying cash. So you don't even need a loan commitment at that point in time. Once we get this inspection period done, we're able to look over the information and see whether or not this is something that she wants to go along with or renegotiate. Then you can figure it out at that point, right? Instead of just having a buyer going in and saying, okay, I'm not inspecting it. This is the home I want. And then right around closing, something happens. AC breaks down, there's a leak here, whatever it is that a person can find. And the worst part about it is that you don't expect it. It's one thing if you see it and say someone says, listen, that AC is older and you have that information, you can kind of say, okay, well, I took a gamble and I thought AC was gonna last me at least 6 months, but nope, it's right at closing, right? But you
Let
wanna
me ask
get
you a question real quick,
Go ahead, brother.
just kind of a little bit off target, but what kind of market is it now? Is it a seller's market or a buyer's market
It's
in
it's
Palm Beach County?
Yeah, in Palm Beach County, we're at like 4.1 months of supply. So if it's under 3 months of supply, it's a seller's market, right? Anywhere between if it's under 3 months of supply, meaning that if no more homes went on the market and people started buying, you'd have about 3 months left before there's no more homes to buy. That's kind of what that means. So we're kind of like in a transitional time at 21, 22. This is when you were 21, 22, too. People could refinance and, they were coming out and doing appraisals. Homes were going selling for 50, 60, $70,000 above what the market, last home sold for or appraisal. Appraisal is just based on what happened in the past. Oh, excuse me. Anything under 3 months is a seller's market. Anything over 6 months is like your buyer's market territory. We're about at 4.1. We were in buyer's market or pretty close to it a couple months back, but it's kind of starting to flip and kind of what we call transitional.
Hmm,
Yeah, yeah. So we're
that's
so
interesting.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think what of course this is just a theory of mine. A lot of people were waiting on interest rates to drop below 6%. And really 5.8 was like, that moment where it's like I think it would have been a frenzy. But it never did. I think we're right now we're around 6.5, 6.6. It did drop for a 0.5% for a little bit. But I think at this point, people are just like they're tired of waiting. People actually have to move, right? Like they have to sell or this house, they don't want there's maintenance they don't want to do anymore. A lot of baby boomers are owning these huge homes, right? So they're getting to the point where they want to retire. They want less maintenance. People aren't visiting or they're not living at home or they've moved out. So a lot of people don't want to have a lot of that these are a lot of people that I'm experiencing anyways. But yeah, so the relationship, what I realized was that the relationship is allowing people to make their own decision. Now, one of the things that Joel and I we were talking about what I would call an objection, right? And this objection would be something like, I need to think about it. I need to think about it. It's so funny. So my objection handler for that, shouts out to what is it? I think it was my coach at the time was like Dan King. I always thought this was like the best objection handler for I need to think about it was like, well, you need to think about it, right? So what we would do is you'd repeat what they said and then you'd affirm it. You'd affirm what they said. Oh, you need to think about it. That makes total sense. I mean, I probably yeah, yeah, I probably would wanna think about it as well, and you know what I found? Or you can say, "You know what's typical?" Or you know what happens with most people, right? Like, this is now you're making it seem like this is not just us in this situation, like, this not this specific, because it's not. Like, it's not a special situation, like something crazy, right? You know, what people often think is that time and information will allow you to make an easier decision. Right? No, excuse me. People think that time will allow you to make a better decision, but what you really need is more information. What is it that I haven't answered for you in this conversation, right? So now you made them make them think like, okay, what information am I which is probably what it is like I'm missing information to where I can't make an educated decision like because the decision is really not going to change if I think go somewhere and think about it. I'm going to probably go find more information or make this information up in my mind, right? Because I don't have the information. Like, what is it that I haven't answered that for you not to have that information? And this is not to make them say yes, right? Like this is not this me saying that, if I were to say that, I probably wouldn't say it exactly like that now, but this is not for them to say, yeah, what my job is to give you the information, you can make a decision. The worst thing that can happen is not that you lose the sale or this deal or the relationship, is that you take too long to lose the sale or this relationship. It might not be the right time for them based upon, some logical and rational reasons. But if you want to be great at having relationships, you want trust, have these crucial conversations with your client, right? Or with your prospect. Like, because at this point, oh, you know what? You're right. And maybe it isn't, but maybe it's not me. Maybe I'm the person. So maybe I can refer you to somebody else who probably specializes in, you know, 55 plus condos. But it's like the ability to get someone to make their own decision and figure and see that a lot of the reasons why we don't make a decision it's so funny, Joe Hudson, shouts out to Joe Hudson, is because we're already in the decision. Well, what do you mean you're in the decision? Like you're in a place of where there's just things are like overwhelming and it's convoluted and there's lack of clarity, lack of understanding. Anytime that's happening, for you to go off on your own and make it or speak to someone who doesn't have the context of what exactly is going on, you may end up making the decision that you may regret later on. Right? So it's not about it the timing may not be right because why is the timing not right? I don't have the time, the resources, the money, with resources being time, money, whatever. I may not have it at this point, but we can figure that out together if there's trust. And what else this also tells you, like, there might be a lack of trust here. So now we get a chance to figure out, like, could we ever get past that? Is how she said, the way that I position myself is for me to only work with women. She's like, I don't want to work with men. Now you can't technically do that ethically. You can't really discriminate against you work with who you can't. But we are in a modernian time where a woman or a person may feel, and it's acceptable. Now you can have that same thing with a client or prospective client. She may not trust handsome men like myself, right? Like she may not trust the hat that I'm wearing. Like who knows, but and that may be something that you could never get over. Or you possibly could, but do you want to spend the time doing that when there's actually people out there who love who you are? Right, like, people who you can spend the time with. So, really for us as in this relationship, is like, is there a relationship? Is there even a Chris Voss talks about it. Is there a deal here? And for me, like, when I say, "Is there a deal here?" Like, is there even a relationship here? Like, is there even a possibility of something happening? Or am I just spinning my wheels? Or am I just giving out free what Chris Voss calls free consulting? Right, like, they're getting all your information, and they're gonna take it someplace else, which I once again, if I'm aware of that exchange, 9 times out of 10, I'm fine with it. Like, "Hey, listen, I'm here, you're here, let's have the conversation." I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna get something out of this conversation, but then if it's a disingenuous conversation to where it's just like, and if you're in sales for a while and you get enough repetitions, you're gonna start to pick up on, like, certain patterns. Right? I'm not coming out making the assumption, but after a while, it's like certain patterns. Like, okay, I've given you this, I've given you that, I've given you this, and then all of a sudden, somebody else is doing this. You just took it back to your friend, could be your wife, your daughter, whatever it is. Once again, it's different if it was an honest conversation and you wanted this information, and I had the time for it. But it's different if you're coming in disguise of something else, and it could be a disingenuous conversation. Go where figure out the problem that you want to solve, or the problem that needs to be solved, and go with people who are able to receive it at that time, like, or find the biggest demographic, and they're willing to pay you too. If we're going to like real sales, like find those things. And but you're right that it was sales. That's so interesting. I remember looking for an attorney once, and I'm like, man, I need an attorney, right? Had the money and everything. I think I called up a couple people just trying to get an understanding of what it was they had, and information, just how they would work with me to find out who the right one was. And so I didn't make a decision on, who I was gonna pick, because 'cause I'm like, nobody really just stood out to me in a certain kind of way. And I hung up the phone, and then maybe like a week went by, and I'm like, "Man, is somebody gonna call me back?" You know what I mean? Like, one of these people who I reached out to, all they all they had to do was, like, pick up the phone and say, "Hey, man, Mike, I remember you called earlier this week. I was thinking about you, and man, blah, blah, blah. I thought of something different about your case," or, whatever the case may be. And I was like, "Oh, man, I'm looking for somebody to essentially give my money to take on this case." The first phone call didn't really make a difference in it. And then the person who I ended up choosing as an attorney, she spent like an hour and a half on the phone with me. Matter of fact, I didn't even go to call her. I was like actually calling her son. I got a referral for her son, and she's also in the field. And she ended up picking up the phone, and she just spoke to me about an hour and a half, and next thing you know, I was hiring her versus even speaking with her who her son was, right? Even in the example of attorneys, realtors are up there as far as, people saying are salespeople. I do think that there is a stain on certain industries. I think attorneys get a terrible stain on it, and some of it is justified, because what happens with that is, like, a lot of in my experiences, they really don't do a good job of giving people proper expectations. I used to call it bad client management, right? That's what we're taught. Man, you got bad client management, or you're not managing your clients' expectations. I think it's better for you to give clients the truth and allow them to manage their own expectations. I'm gonna talk about it real quick. Is family law, most law period, it's super Simple. Like, unless you're out here lobbying for certain legislation to change, you're actually lobbying against or for different judges. Most of these judges and these are going to pretty much rule according to law. Now, are there times when these judges aren't ruling according to law? Absolutely. Can you go into a courtroom and essentially say to yourself, I'm going to throw myself upon the mercy of the court and think it's going to go your way? Absolutely, that's going to happen. Are you going to go to court at times and not understand the procedural ways of having to submit things, which is a total shock? A lot of people think that being an attorney is like what you see on Suits or some of these shows where this attorney comes out and says, here's the smoking gun. You know what I mean? Like a Matlock thing. Like, here's one more thing, and they present this evidence. No, your attorney gives all of the evidence in discovery matter of fact, you have to say what evidence you're going to do prior to trial. That way they have a chance to look at it or things you're going to present, and vice versa. A lot of people think that it's like, oh no, my attorney's going to do something spectacular, right? Like something weird is going to happen. That's not necessarily how it actually goes, right? So attorneys knowing that for the most part. And this is when you become a master of your craft. So if I'm going to specialize in this law, whatever law it is, practice, whether it's, immigration law, family court law, criminal law, whatever it is, you get to specialize in it because I'm telling you, once you start to specialize in this specific thing, you have all these other attorneys who are essentially jack of all trades. There's attorneys who are willing to take your case for anything. Yeah, you all don't sue me. This is my experience. But the entire bar might come down on it, but you have attorneys who are willing to take any case. It's easy to sue for some type of injury law, but hey, if there's this case on this side, I got a deep understanding of especially the procedural thing about the law. I'll take that case. I'll do that. But if you are so nuanced in one thing, and the next thing after you're nuanced in it is the ability to get the reps. So now when you're going before the court, I'm gonna use family law because it's pretty clear for me. There's a certain way that this judge is going to rule, right? So for me to sit here and just to get you as a client to say, hey, we're going to get all these things for you, knowing somewhere that this is normally not how the judge rules. So this is a bad what I've seen for most people is they allow the client to talk and come up with their own assumptions. And then later on down the line, they beat them over the head with, that you're not going to get that. The way that it's looking, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that. You know what I mean? And to spend the amount of time on it. If you don't allow this person their own to understand what the expectations are, what the decisions are, because you're scared you're not going to get your retainer, they're going to find somebody else because there's a lot of real estate agents. And these things are super similar. If you're not an expert in this thing, the way that and how you get and retain clients, oftentimes like the expectations aren't there. So what happens is the expectations aren't there. This thing just gets stretched out as far as whatever the resources are, whether it's the time, because oftentimes if a person knew what they were up against, they say, okay, let's figure this thing out in mediation. Right. Like, and even before I go in mediation, let's figure this out before mediation so that when we get to mediation, all we're doing is coming up with the exact verbiage for this thing. Right? We already understand where we're going. Not wait until mediation to drop the hammer on your client saying, yeah, you're not going to be able to get that. I remember being in mediation and the mediator was saying, I don't think anybody's talking to this person. Or I remember me being in mediation and be like, man, I had no idea. Like this is out of left field, right? Oh, well, let's go another hour or 2 hours. No, 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 no. Because I got to pay the attorney their hourly fee. I have to pay the mediator their hourly fee. And all of this stuff is just kind of like you're trying to beat this thing over my head and I don't even know if this is real because nobody told me that. So the ability as a salesperson, if you can go in there and this is where the relationship comes. This is where the trust happens. There's a saying in sales. They got to know you, like you, trust you, right? Like they say, they got to know you, like you, trust you. That's how you get a sales. I would often say that they don't have to like you. It helps, right? It supports for a person to help you. But it's when I'm dealing with an attorney, when I'm dealing with a doctor, when I'm dealing if I were to deal with a real estate person, if I were to deal with any sales, I don't really gotta necessarily like you, but I need to trust that you're gonna be able to do what it is you say you're gonna do. I definitely gotta know you. If I don't know you, then I'm not gonna hire you, right? Because I'm not aware of you. But I need to be able to trust you. Like is okay. Like, yeah, I would rather like you, but I don't have to like you. There's a lot of a-hole lawyers or doctors that you're like, man, this person has a like, I don't want to talk to them, but they're the best at what they do. You know that they're going to get the job done. I want that working on. I want to be able to trust the person that I work with. It was just so interesting with this thing. But so to get back to certain industries, there are a lot of industries where the reputation is well deserved. Right, like, it's well deserved to be an industry to say that, "I don't wanna deal with this agent, they're just money hungry. I don't wanna deal with this attorney, they're just gonna stretch this thing out and they're gonna take everything from me. I don't wanna deal with" what are some negative industries that they got? Insurance salesmen, a lot of people like insurance people. "Oh, this is a what if, they're trying to gouge me." But then when something happens, you woulda wish you had a trusted advisor in insurance or a trusted advisor to help you buy this property or a trusted advisor to help you get through whatever court case, litigation it is that you're doing. You know what I mean? Let me ask you a question. With that car, was it a specific dealership or was it like Automax, CarMax, similar to that? And so you had a Ford and he was a Ford salesperson. Okay, got it. Yeah. Let's go through this real quick. And I want people to understand this because it's almost like you're the 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 steps, and this will help you with whatever business a person is in if you can walk them through what just happened. I'm coming to buy a car. I would even do this before you said this is the one. You're in the business and you sit down with Kyle and Kyle, you say you want to test drive a car. And Kyle, you and Kyle get in the car and Kyle say, hey, before we even start, let's do this. And they do all of those things before. Yeah, this is for a car sales. It's the same thing in real estate. If you a prospect comes and you can walk them through and not only walk them through what they're going to expect. You brought up something about when you went to Pomp when you were you were closing something, you were getting all the information together. What we have in real estate is almost like I'm not really going to properties or even meeting with people until they know they want to work. That we're going to work together. So before I'm giving out all this information, and there's a certain amount of things that you do prior to meeting with, like actually meeting with a person, whether it's listing or not. You're able to show a person exactly what it is that they're in store for. You made it their car. Just like it's almost what we would call in NLP, it's future pacing. If you can future pace a client on what it is that they can expect and you actually come through with it. You show up when you say you're going to show up. You say exactly what's going to happen. You do what you say you're going to do. It makes the relationship, first off, there's the trust part of the relationship. Like you can't help but like the guy now because it sounds like Kyle is Kyle, and he still calls you. Yeah. So that's establishing the trust in a relationship. The relationship is going to be based on connection and then connection and trust. Connection and trust. But what Kyle did with that, the person who sold the most cars in like the history of car sales, they talk about him all the time in sales. His name is escaping me now. But one of the things that he does is whether a person comes in or not, or buys or not at that time, what he did was he sent out thank you cards. So if you just came on the lot, he would get all your information. It wasn't about a phone call like, "Hey, are you gonna go buy this house?" It's a thank you card, and you would continuously get thank you cards, and the brother and I had this conversation yesterday. Now you become the car guy. Like I have this car guy who's sending me this stuff all the time. Even though if I don't buy a car from him because maybe I don't want whatever he's selling, that specific model, I'm going to ask him about it. Maybe he gets a referral for you, maybe he doesn't. But now you become the car guy. Hey, you looking for a car? Hey, go see my guy Kyle at the Ford dealership. Right? It's a lot of this stuff is super interesting. And I'll leave with this. So much a great book to read outside of a lot of the books that we've already spoken about. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, anything that goes along with that. There's another guy, Robert Cialdini, Influence. It really gets things down to a human nature. Something else that and brother, you could talk about the book that you just read because I remember you spoke about it, was The Greatest Salesman. Yeah, yeah, that's good stuff, man. That's good. And being a better person. I wrote a blog. That's so interesting you brought that up, brother, is that I wrote a blog when I first started real estate, like as far as getting my license. And I was like, huh, when they were teaching you how to have conversations and talk, I'm like, this really is just about being a better person. You're right. So that's so interesting that you drew that parallel to that thought process. Now really you have a reason to reach out. If you didn't think you had one before, you really don't need a reason, but if you didn't have one, now you do. And if you do it with it, we spoke about being disingenuine, but how about just being genuine? If we do this while being genuine, like so many things open up. And to that last part that you spoke about as far as sincere relationships, what I'm finding more and more is that a lot of people don't have those sincere relationships. No one's calling someone just to say, how are you doing? Or how are you feeling and not wanting something. Right, like you're waiting, okay, yeah, this person got well, I wonder what they want now. Right, like, what are they gonna ask for now or whatever, sometimes I remember I getting to a point where it was like that, like, what do they want? They always want something, when they call, but when it comes to a point where you're just having a conversation for the sake of having a conversation, yeah, sometimes you drop in, "Hey, I'm doing this now," or, "I have this available now," but it's not like I want something. Not to say that there's anything wrong with it, but when that's all you have, the amount of resentment a person could build up from that, from people just always being wanting something out of them and not necessarily pouring in or just not even, just being with a person, being able to hold them how they are. Like a lot of people don't have that. And that's a shame. That can be changed though, guys. The Opportunity Lab. You all go check my book. You all, yeah, yeah, Kevin. People, man, awesome show, man. Always great to have the brother here. Yeah. Like, subscribe, engage, Community Beacon TV, man. We appreciate you, man. We will see you next week, God willing, and the creek don't rise, man. Peace.